What's up, y'all? I figured I was gonna do my fight picks a little bit differently this time, where I'm just gonna try to make a video of it and not have to do as much typing and start having there be video evidence with a date on it, since I've been at like such a high pick success ratio for such a long time. So I will have my much briefer description in or my briefer percentages of the picks and the description of why in the description of this video, but I don't know how to share it on the screen separately, so not going to do it there. But I will again go over this later and it will be in the screen. So I guess we'll start with the main card. For Israel Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier, I have Israel Adesanya having a 60% chance to win. And here's why. Israel uses kicks to win the kicking range, basically. Like, so if you're standing away from Izzy, he's going to kick at you and kick at you and kick at you, and he's totally willing to win on points in that manner. What he also does with this, though, is similar to the way wrestlers use takedowns. He can use these kicks to poke at you and make you think you're defending a kick, and then he hits you with a punch if he attacks. Now, on the main point of this, though, is that Izzy wants you to come to him. So Izzy, if he can beat you at kicking range, he's just going to poke at you and poke at you and poke at you and force you into attack. And when you attack, as we all know, Izzy is the master counter striker. He's going to use his super great reflexes. He's going to use his ability to have such great trunk movement where he can literally just lean out of the way and crack you and knock you out like he did with Whitaker, or he's just going to react the way he does with Anderson Silva. And basically he knows he can just rely on himself to win the counter-striking exchange. So best case scenario for Izzy, he will poke at you until you just explode in on him, and that's what he's hoping for, and that's what I think is going to happen in this fight. So Cannonier really is the perfect matchup for Izzy. Cannonier is going to have to force the action. I don't see Cannonier being able to beat Izzy at kicking range. However, there is a small chance, if you rewatch Cannonier's fight with Anderson Silva, Cannonier won that fight with leg kicks. He was able to take out Anderson Silva, who's known for having, well, I don't want to say known for having durable legs, but he's never been hurt by a leg kick besides when he hurt himself and broke his leg. But nobody's ever hurt him by leg kicking him. He's got fairly durable Muay Thai legs. So it's pretty surprising that Cannonier was able to do that. But failing that happening, which I don't necessarily see happening to Izzy, as he's pretty good at defending leg kicks, Cannonier is going to have to force the action. He's going to have to explode in, which is just what Israel wants. And, I mean, granted, Cannonier also does this pretty well. I don't see him necessarily being able to take down Izzy, although if Izzy kind of slips or something, if Cannonier gets on top, that could be bad. I mean, Cannonier took out Derek Brunson, a wrestler, from on top. So, I mean, it's possible that that could be a problem for Izzy. However, the strategy I see Cannonier having here is he's literally going to be taking a page out of Anthony Pettis versus Wonderboy Johnson, where Anthony Pettis famously said that quote, "I was waiting to feel shin bone and then I exploded." So he went into that fight thinking, I'm going to lose at every range. I'm just going to get lit up. And then eventually Wonderboy is going to be a little bit too close to me when he's hitting me. And when that happens, I'll explode, because Wonderboy the fence, and right as Wonderboy was kicking, and because he was hitting that fence and Wonderboy was kicking him, that kick basically was a little too close. So he went shin bone into Pettis. Pettis fed the shin bone and he exploded. And because he was on the cage and because Wonderboy was closer than he meant to be, he was able to make up for that extra range and knocked him out. Up until that point, that strategy hadn't been working because he didn't have that extra boost from the cage, even when Wonderboy was too close. I see Cannonier having the exact same strategy here. He's probably just going to be like, I'm going to take a hit, and when it's the right type of hit, I'll be able to hit him back, which is a really crappy strategy to have, because it means you're going to leave that fight bruised up pretty much no matter what. So you're going in there just knowing I'm just going to get cracked by 200-pound Israel Adesanya over and over and over until hopefully he's a little too close to me. And at that point, I'm going to explode and just be as deadly and ruthless as possible. Now, because Cannonier is extremely deadly and ruthless, and he's such a great finisher, that's why I've got him at like a 40% chance. And again, I'll have these percentages in the description. But if it wasn't for Cannonier's finishing ability and just all around knockout power and just devastating finisher instincts, I'd probably have him at like a 30. Like the matchup is just that bad. Like the matchup on paper is just like Izzy's dream. And then Whitaker swings back and Izzy dodges it. Now that's a big if though. So 60% for Izzy, 40% for Cannonier. Let's move on to Holloway, and I'm just pulling up the main points here that I would be sharing on the screen if I knew how. So Volk versus Holloway. So Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. So I'm a little bit biased here because Max Holloway is probably my favorite fighter, with the exception of maybe O'Malley, who's also on this card. So we got a lot of bias on this one. But trying to remove my bias, I'm going to give this one a 50-50, not to be a giant cop-out, but those first two fights were close. The judges could have gone either way. I think if you really assess it, Volk probably won both on points, but it wasn't, a convincing win. And a lot of people would argue that. Max did get a knockdown in the second fight, and they didn't even count the knockdown for him. So, I think it's fairly safe to say Volkanovski was probably feeling worse than Max the next day after that second fight. First fight, probably both equal. But basically, Volk has had a good way to play, touch against Max. And he's been able to hit Max enough to win judges' decisions, but it's not been convincing. So Volkanovski probably really wants a finish here. So a lot of people are looking at the Volk versus Zombie fight, and they're thinking, did Volk get better? Is he faster? I don't think so. I think that Korea too late, or he's just like Volk is moving on the counter before Zombie's even done reacting to the feint. So it basically makes Zombie look slower when he bites on the feint, and it makes Volk look faster. And Volkanovski's an expert at feinting. He's like really, really good at that. So like when you add that plus his natural speed, I don't think he necessarily got faster. He might have, but we can't really know that since Zombie literally bit every single feint. It could have just been a showcase of really, really good timing plus normal speed for him, which is really fast. That being said, Volkanovski did beat the crap out of Zombie, and he looked great doing it. And if that Volkanovski shows up, which he's fairly consistent, that's top tier Volkanovski. Now here's where this gets interesting: Max versus Cater. Max Holloway beat the crap out of Kelvin Cater, and it was like one of the best performances of all time. It was a one-way beating of all one-way beatings. He was no-looking him, like ridiculous. Like, and he was talking to Dana, talking about how he's the best boxer in the world while no-looking Cater and just like dodging and punching. Like totally ridiculous. I think that was like one of the records for maybe the division or something where it was like the most strikes landed in a fight were on Kelvin Cater from Max's punching. That was like just absolutely incredible. If that Max shows up, I imagine, and granted, you could say maybe I'm being biased and I'm saying that Max and he relied on his legendary chin, and he did win. But can that Max beat? Can that Max beat Volk? I don't know. And can it beat the Volk that beat Zombie? It's a good question. If it's somewhere in between, if just regular Volk and regular Max show up, what do we get? Another 50-50? And here's the other problem. Well, the miles on Max, he's only 30. He's younger than Volkanovski, but he's been fighting since 20. I mean, you got to think Max Holloway is the guy that gave Oliveira the quitting reputation among all the fighters because he hit him in the throat and Oliveira kind of quit. I used to get them confused back 10 years ago when they were both like 20, and it was like two skinny guys in the 145 division with black hair. And I kept being like, I thought this guy was a jiu-jitsu guy. Oh, I thought he was a striker. And then eventually they fought each other, and I was like, oh. But that was like back in the day. But either way, Max has fought Poirier twice. I mean, that Poirier fight he took some hits. He took hits in the Kattar fight. He took hits in the Yair fight. He took hits in the Ortega fight. Granted, Max did a lot better against Ortega than Volk did in a way, because Ortega was never close to finishing Max. He was certainly close to finishing Volk. In fact, I'd say if Volk wasn't so big trapped and short, he would have been done. But I want to like Volk, but I just Max is one of my favorite fighters, so I got to go for Max on this one. But I still think it's about a 50-50 fight. And the other thing is, will those miles catch up on Max? That's one X factor. The other X factor is Volkanovski tired of being known as the guy who can't finish and goes for the finish, and it kind of throws away his ability to win on points? Because if so, and the same Max shows up, Max probably wins. But the other way around is, what if Max changes up his game plan, and what will that change look like? Volkanovski is a little bit earlier in the game, even though he's older in age. In theory, he has more development to make. So, and he's from that city kickboxing camp, and he has another camp too, but they're, mastermind strategies. Volkanovski's kind of like a fast Izzy with no power. Izzy's kind of like a slow Volk with power, some power. But they both are playing to touch. They're not necessarily playing to knock out. So it kind of changes when Volk does that. But that's enough about that. 50-50. Don't bet on that fight, would be my opinion. Now we've got another interesting one, Strickland versus Pereira. So Strickland was on fire at the press conference. He made Izzy so mad. It was super funny. Started talking about watching like cartoon porn and stuff like that. It's so funny. Anyway, Strickland, he spars like he should fight, and he fights like he should spar, which is a weird thing. If you watch his sparring footage, he is in there trying to knock out people. He's just sitting in the pocket, just firing boxing over and over and over. Hopefully that Strickland shows up, but if it's the normal Strickland where he just sits in the pocket and just kind of plays tag, either way, Pereira is going to love that. Pereira is the guy who, if you don't know, knocked out Israel Adesanya in kickboxing. How did he do that, you ask? Pereira, similar to Jan Blachowicz. Oh, and let's go back with this too. So when we're talking about the Israel fight, let me just back up real quick. So when we're talking about the Israel fight against Cannonier, look what happened when Israel's kicking game did get shut down. Jan Blachowicz has the best shutdown for kicking game maybe in the UFC. He shut down Izzy's kicks. Izzy had to fight in boxing range, which left him more open for the takedown, and made it so that he couldn't just be a counterpuncher the whole time. That's how you have to beat Izzy. And I don't think Cannonier can do that, but in that way. Pereira could. Pereira is a boxing-based kickboxer. He is good enough of a kickboxer to where he could shut down kicking game well enough, but he thrives on his boxing. Strickland doesn't kick, so it doesn't really matter, but Pereira is going to be very happy to box with him. But just wanted to throw that out there. You've got the kind of Yoel Romero style where he just let Izzy poke at him with the kicks and just waited, so Izzy couldn't really do anything there. You've got the Jan style where he just checked all his kicks. I mean, look, Jan has the best kicking defense in the game. I mean, look what he just did to Rakic. Rakic just beat his own self by kicking Jan. Like, Jan checked all those kicks and it hurt his leg, and it ended up being the torn ACL or whatever happened to him. Anyway, Cannonier can't do that, or he's never done that, at least. I mean, don't want to say he can't. Possible, but I've never seen him do that. Now, Pereira did a similar thing to Izzy. And now, granted, Pereira did almost get knocked out in that fight, but Pereira has a great chin. Certainly a good enough chin to take hits from Strickland, you would think. And I would imagine he kicks better than Strickland too. So he's got a little bit of an. I mean, it's hard to imagine MMA fighter with good MMA boxing, Strickland, beating one of the best kickboxers of all time in his weight class in a striking fight. Especially when Pereira is better at the thing that Strickland is best at. So now here's the other question here is, it's a power versus volume. Like, let's just say Strickland just is on Pereira's level. Just like we find that out. It's possible. He's been boxing really, really well. Let's say he just happens to be able to deal with Pereira in boxing. Pereira hits hard. Strickland hits often. Strickland could win that on points if he can take Pereira's hits, but it's a big if. Strickland at 185 instead of 170, he can take a hit a lot better though, and he's pretty fucking crazy. So now let's see what happens here. Can Strickland take Pereira down? Probably not. Pereira new to MMA. Strickland doesn't have great takedowns, but is it good enough? And if he does take him down, does it matter? Pereira's training with Glover Teixeira. You would think that Glover Teixeira's jiu-jitsu and ground game is at least as good as Strickland's. Strickland is supposed to have some pretty underrated ground game, though, but we never see it. But, let me throw this out here, too. Pereira's a combat sports vet. Strickland's an MMA vet. Sometimes you see these veterans beat these talented guys in weird ways, in however they have to. Don't see Strickland just holding Pereira down, but stuff like that does happen. But I am still, what did I say was my percent on this? I gave Pereira 55%. That's a little bit weird. The reason I did that, the reason I gave Pereira only 55 and Sean 45 when I was originally thinking 60-40 is because Sean was so confident at the press conference. Like, he just seems like he's on fire. He seems very confident. My friend disagrees with me. He thinks he's scared, but I think he just has public speaking issues. And I think I am more of a mental health professional than you, Rob. No, I'm just kidding. But I think Sean just has fear of public speaking, and that's what that nervousness is. I don't think he's afraid of Pereira. And that's meaningful. So let's wrap this up with a quick couple. So we've got Robbie Lawler versus Barberena. I'm giving a heavy 60-65 chance to Barberena. They both love to brawl. Robbie will probably engage him in that brawl. Sometimes he plays safe, but sometimes he brawls. Either way, I favor Barberena to beat a 40-year-old Robbie Lawler. I don't know about a prime Robbie Lawler, but we're not talking about a prime Robbie Lawler. We're talking about a 40-year-old Robbie Lawler versus like a 31-year-old or something Barberena. I mean, it's hard to see Robbie winning that. Sorry, Robbie. Now, here is my favorite, Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munhoz. So I think O'Malley is the best technical striker of all time in MMA. Some people would find that controversial. I don't care. I will say why I think this. I think, do you remember old school 145 McGregor? He would use that karate stance and he would use his kicks to corral people into his punches. And he would basically get guys going. He would pressure with footwork. They have less range than him and they're less good at that kicking range, and he would just slip and just crack them. Now, O'Malley does that. What else does O'Malley do, you ask? He also blitzes like Wonderboy Thompson does. He has similar kicks to Wonderboy Thompson. What else does he do, you ask? He has seriously good disruption timing like Masvidal, or one of the Diaz's jabs. Like when O'Malley's jabbing or when O'Malley's doing any type of like range, like straight, whether it's a kick or a punch or a jab or whatever, when he's doing a cross jab, teep, whatever he's doing, if it's a straight move, if you watch it close, it's landing while the other guy is in between on a step. Like they're literally like one foot's off the ground or both feet. Like he's great at disruption timing. He's also really good at getting their timing while throwing you off of his timing because he can be going fast, slow, whatever. On top of that, he's also got the Israel Adesanya or Alexander Volkanovski thing where he's really good at feinting. Like, let's look at what happened to Wineland. Eddie Wineland, like, yeah, he just lost recently, but he's also kind of old now. Eddie Wineland's a good boxer. He's always been a good boxer. When people watch that fight with O'Malley, it looks like O'Malley just went up to him and just knocked him out, but it was from feints. He had this hand out. He makes people bite on feints. So it means he's not only reading their timing, but he's also reading how they react to feints. There's no way that Munhoz isn't going to bite on O'Malley's feints. But the reason I'm saying this is O'Malley has the whole feinting game of a Volkanovski or an Izzy. He has the blitzing game of Wonderboy Thompson. He has the corralling and counter-striking of a Conor McGregor. And he has the timing of a Masvidal. Now, here's the kicker. He does it on both sides. Like, he can do it in orthodox or southpaw. I just don't see anybody having better kicking, punching, stand-up technique than O'Malley. Happy to debate this further and in more detail, but I just don't see how anybody could have better literal technique than him. Now, here's the problem. O'Malley has some serious durability issues, and I think his technique is so good that he could have gotten all the way through amateurs and low-level pros without ever having durability tested. Most guys, when they get to the UFC, it's like they've taken some hits, like they've fought somebody where it's like they've had to show that they're pretty durable people. BJ Penn had that interview where he was talking about he didn't even ever show bruising until he was like 30. O'Malley definitely shows bruising. O'Malley has broken his leg kicking people. He's gotten that crazy thing happen where his leg just shut down and he was hopping on one foot from one not even that big leg kick from Vera. And he has an okay chin. He never lost consciousness when he was hopping on one foot and taking hits and eventually went to the ground and got elbowed. But that being said, he's a gamer, he's got that whole game face. He's got that, I can read you, you can't read me thing. He's got way better technique. He's way faster. He has really great reflexes, all those things on paper, but he's broken his own leg kicking people. He's had that thing where it happened where his leg just broke from one very minor leg kick. He's broken his hands on his opponent's faces in the middle of a fight. He went into his last fight with a hurt rib. And then after that fight, he hurt his knee. So it's either, we can only hope as O'Malley fans, and by we, I mean me and any other O'Malley fans, can only hope that it just happens to be kind of a weird injury late in time for him. But it could also be a pattern. He's fighting much more durable guys now who he can hurt himself hitting them. Now, why does this matter? It matters because Munhoz is the complete opposite. Munhoz has okay technique. He's got good ground game, but he's the most durable guy in the division. Nobody's ever knocked him out. Every firefight he's ever gotten, he's won, and not by technique and not by outpunching people as far as landing. It's been by, I can take your hit and you can't take mine eventually. He takes some serious bombs and just eats them. And the rest of them's durable too. I mean, I could easily see a situation where O'Malley just same what happened to Chris Moutinho, where O'Malley just lights him up for a while, but eventually hurts himself hitting him. Munhoz also has pretty good leg kicks, which is also worrying when you consider O'Malley's leg durability issues. So kind of the way I see this fight looking, I think the first couple rounds, O'Malley's just going to starch Munhoz. O'Malley, maybe even the first round and a half, O'Malley's going to starch Munhoz. He's just going to lights out. He's way faster. He's way more technical. He's way better counter striker. Munhoz is just not going to be able to hit him. But eventually, Munhoz is going to be able to land some leg kicks. He might be able to land a lucky shot, although he's got 8-inch less reach and he's way slower. So it's and O'Malley fights long. It's unlikely, that O'Malley gets landed on, but it could happen. But more likely, I would see O'Malley just kind of breaking himself on Munhoz's face. That being said, I could also see this fight coming down to who loses between O'Malley taking leg kicks and Munhoz taking punches to the face. And I could probably see it as 4 punches to the face per leg kick. That being said, you could still see Munhoz winning under those conditions just because it's, this will really test that durability problem. We don't know if there's a durability problem for O'Malley, but this is going to test it. And because of that, I give Sean O'Malley 57% chance to win, because he should win, but that durability is sketchy. If it weren't for the durability issues, if O'Malley is just as durable as everybody else, or if he is as durable as everybody else, I would give him like a 70-75% chance to win this. I would have as big a favorite on the card. And like I said, I think he's amazing. Like I don't like watching anybody more than I like watching O'Malley. As somebody who is much more striking oriented, O'Malley, I just love that dude. And every time I watch his fights, which I've watched them all multiple times, I see different layers to his game that I never saw before. Similarly to what happens if you watch like Alexander Volkanovski or something. So real quickly, I also have Jalin Turner beating Riddell by 55% to 45. Jalin Turner just hits so hard, and he's so calm under fire. So is Riddell. So I just kind of see them having like a really calm but kind of just bloodbath. And I just see Jalin Turner being able to take his hits and give bigger ones. But Brad Riddell could also win that. Cowboy. Cowboy's already beat Jim Miller, I think. And on paper should, but he's also, speaking of, miles on the clock, Cowboy's got more miles on the clock than anybody. So, I mean, if those catch up, Jim Miller wins, but if they don't, Cowboy wins, 55% Cowboy. Also of note, Garry versus Gabe Green. Gabe Green is a lot better than people want to say. Gabe Green is a legitimate threat. Garry, he's kind of just like a big McGregor. So I'm going to give it to Garry, 53% to 47% though, so not by much. So that wraps this up. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. These percentages will be in the description. Thank you.